Hello, I am Tarık Toros. Welcome to What's Happening in Turkey. Cold War in Ankara, State Crisis, Kurdish Deadlock, and the British Kiss. This week, as Ankara celebrated the 102nd anniversary of the Republic, a major political crisis erupted. Behind the official ceremonies, deep tensions were quietly unfolding within the ruling circles. No matter how bright the stage looked, the power struggle behind it was impossible to hide. Turkey's economic crisis is worsening. The big question now is, can President Erdogan's former finance minister, Ali Babacan, recently brought back into the government's economic orbit, really calm the markets and lower inflation and interest rates? At the same time, the Kurdish peace process has hit another deadlock. No member of the pro-Kurdish DEM party was invited to the Republic Day reception at the presidential palace, a symbolic snap showing just how fragile dialogue has become. Meanwhile, the PKK announced it will withdraw its remaining fighters from Turkey into Iraq. Could this signal a turning point? And in foreign policy, another shift is underway. After failing to secure F-35s and F-16 upgrades from the United States, Erdogan turned to Britain, signing a deal to purchase 20 Eurofighter jets worth £8 billion. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer made a quick visit to Ankara to finalize the deal. But notably, when he returned to London, he never once mentioned Erdogan by name. Why? Let's find out. State crisis in Ankara. Tensions between Turkey's ruling coalition partners, the ultra-nationalist MHP and the dominant AKP, burst into the open during Republic Day week. MHP leader Devlet Bahçeli not only skipped the official reception at the presidential palace, but also refused to send any party representatives. Sources close to Bahçeli say this was a deliberate message of discontent. For months, Bahçeli has been uneasy about police appointments, anti-mafia operations targeting figures close to his party, and new bureaucratic regulations reducing the MHP's influence within the state. But the final straw was Cyprus. Just days after Bahçeli proposed that Turkey should annex northern Cyprus, President Erdogan publicly disagreed, exposing a widening rift between the two men. Around the same time, US media reported that President Donald Trump might soon ask Ankara to withdraw its troops from Cyprus. According to a column in the Washington Examiner, Washington is preparing to offer Turkey a deal bigger than anything even the UN ever proposed, including enhanced defense cooperation, EU-backed energy projects, and new trade privileges in exchange for a troop withdrawal. Cyprus aside, the split within the ruling bloc has reached its most serious point in years. In Ankara's corridors of power, people are now whispering that the rope binding the two partners is wearing dangerously thin. Kurdish patience wears thin. Turkey's most recent Kurdish peace initiative, quietly ongoing for nearly a year, has failed to produce any tangible results, despite discreet contacts between Ankara and imprisoned PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan on İmralı Island. At the outset, Öcalan had declared the PKK dissolved, and the group even held a symbolic disarmament ceremony. Yet despite these gestures, the Turkish government has made no reciprocal political or legal moves. As uncertainty continues, frustration within the PKK is mounting. On 26th of October, the organization announced plans to withdraw its remaining militants from Turkish territory into northern Iraq. Sources in Ankara confirmed that between 300 and 600 fighters have already crossed the border. But just before the announcement, footage surfaced showing PKK fighters in military formation, a clear reminder that the earlier disarmament was largely symbolic. Politically, things looked just bleak. No members of the pro-Kurdish DEM party were invited to the Republic Day reception. Although a delegation met President Erdogan the next day, the meeting ended without any progress. Meanwhile, Selahattin Demirtas, now in his 9th year of imprisonment, released a letter addressing the process. He criticized the government for deepening social divisions, citing the ongoing crackdown on the opposition CHP, state control of Kurdish municipalities, and the continued detention of sick or time-served prisoners. In short, Kurdish patience is running out. Despite open communication channels, the lack of meaningful political progress is eroding hope and making Ankara's talk of normalization sound increasingly hollow. Economic crisis deepens. Turkey's economy is enduring one of its toughest periods in decades, with no sign of recovery on the horizon. The country's collapse in global rule of law rankings has scared away investors, while police raids on business figures and state takeovers of private assets have driven domestic capital abroad. President Erdogan seems to realize there is no easy escape. Still, he appears convinced that reshuffling the team might restore confidence. After the 2023 elections, he appointed Mehmet Şimşek, known for his ties to London's financial circles, to signal a return to rational policies. 2.5 years later, that promise has faded. Inflation remains sky high, the lira tightly controlled, and investor confidence shattered. Now Erdogan is once again turning to Ali Babacan, once hailed as the architect of Turkey's economic boom. Babacan broke with Erdogan in 2018 after a bitter fallout and later founded his own party. But for a pragmatist like Erdogan, past conflicts matter little. This week, Babacan was invited to the presidential palace for the first time in 8 years, where he met Finance Minister Şimşek. In Ankara, the meeting is seen as a signal of a coming reshuffle in the economic team. Sources close to Babacan's party describe it as a handover in preparation. Yet the real problem runs much deeper. Without restoring trust, predictability, and the rule of law, no personal changes will convince the markets that Turkey has truly changed direction. A lifeline for the British economy. Even as Turkey faces one of the worst economic crises in its modern history, Ankara has signed an £8 billion fighter jet deal with the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Keir Starmer made a one-day trip to Ankara exclusively for this agreement. The deal covers Eurofighter Typhoon jets, a program largely abandoned by Britain and other EU states in favor of the US-led F-35. Turkey will pay £8 billion for 20 aircraft. Upon returning to London, Starmer hailed the deal as part of Britain's national renewal. The Turkish order will restart the long-idle Eurofighter production line, creating around 20,000 jobs across the UK. But what's most striking is that Starmer never mentioned Erdogan, neither in public remarks nor on social media. The diplomatic silence suggests London wants to frame the deal as an economic victory, carefully distancing itself from Ankara's domestic politics. Meanwhile, Turkey's deepening economic and governance crisis continues to deter foreign investors. Yet, for countries eager to sell weapons, energy, or infrastructure, a cash-strapped Turkey remains a lucrative market. I am Tarık Toros, and you've been watching What's Happening in Turkey. See you next week.